You ever meet someone who thinks they own the whole world just because they're part of some homeowners association? Well, let me tell you about the weekend that changed everything. It started as a quiet family getaway in our cabin. Peaceful, surrounded by pine trees and the sound of the lake lapping against the shore. But then she showed up. Karen, the HOA president who thought she had the right to barge into people's lives, scream orders like a drill sergeant, and demand we comply with her ridiculous rules. But this time, she picked the wrong family. Because when she came stomping up to our door, screaming about violations, my wife calmly handed her something that left her frozen in her tracks. And for the first time ever, Karen had nothing to say. I'm Jake, 34, husband, father, and apparently public enemy number one to our local HOA. My wife, Emily, and I had bought this cabin a year ago as an escape from city life. It was supposed to be a place for peace, a cozy log cabin tucked away in the woods, where we could roast marshmallows with our 2 kids and listen to the crickets at night. But of course, because it's technically part of the same subdivision as a bunch of rich snobs, it still falls under the jurisdiction of the HOA. Now, when I say HOA, I don't mean a group of reasonable neighbors trying to keep things tidy.
Y me and Karen, the woman who ran the hoa like a dictator.
She'd fine people for having their trash cans visible for more than an hour. She once made our neighbor repaint his door because the shade of red was too aggressive. No one liked her, but everyone feared her because she had a reputation for suing people who dared to push back. So when we came up to the cabin that Friday evening, the last thing we expected was trouble. We just wanted a quiet weekend, grill some steaks, let the kids run around, maybe take the canoe out on the lake. The place looked perfect, freshly cleaned, firewood stacked neatly by the porch. Emily and I were unloading groceries when we first heard the sound.
Jake, do you hear that?
Emily asked, squinting toward the long gravel driveway. At first, it sounded like the distant roar of a car engine being pushed way too hard. Then, screeching tires. Gravel sprayed everywhere as a shiny white SUV came tearing down the road toward us. And there she was. Karen. Blonde bob haircut, oversized sunglasses, a clipboard in one hand like it was her badge of authority. The SUV stopped so suddenly it skidded, and she practically leapt out, slamming the door. "You can't do this!" she screamed before even getting halfway up the porch. "This is a clear violation." Emily and I just looked at each other.
The kids peeked out from the cabin door, wide-eyed. "Good evening to you too," Karen said, forcing a smile.
"What exactly can't we do?" She stomped up the steps, clipboard in hand like she was about to write us a ticket. "Don't play dumb, Jake," she snapped. "You're renovating without approval."
I saw the delivery truck yesterday.
"And this," she gestured wildly at the stack of firewood by the porch, "this is not an approved exterior aesthetic. Firewood must be stored in an enclosed shed, per Section 8, Paragraph 4. I stared at her, baffled. "Karen, it's firewood.
We rain the goods.
Everyone here keeps it stacked by the porch." But Karen wasn't listening. She was pacing now, scribbling on her clipboard. "I have the authority to issue a citation immediately. If you don't remove this firewood, you'll face a fine of $200 per day until compliance is achieved."
Emily, ever the calm one, stepped forward. "Karen, we're on vacation.
"This is our family cabin. We're not breaking any rules."
Karen whipped around.
"Oh, I think you are. And if you don't let me inspect the interior renovations right now, I'll be forced to escalate this to the HOA board." I felt my jaw tighten. "You want to inspect the inside of our cabin?"
"Without a warrant."
Karen smirked like she had us cornered. "HOA regulations give me full inspection rights." Emily and I exchanged a glance. Because this was where Karen had just made her biggest mistake. Emily's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Karen, are you sure about that? You're saying you have the right to enter our private property without permission." Karen folded her arms. "Absolutely. If you refuse, you'll be fined, and we can pursue legal action." I could feel my blood pressure rising, but Emily just smiled slightly. She turned, walked inside the cabin, and came back with a manila envelope. When she handed it to Karen, the woman looked confused. She opened it, scanning the papers inside. Her face went pale, because what Karen was holding wasn't just some random paperwork. It was a court-issued injunction, a legal document Emily had obtained months ago after hearing about Karen's harassment of other cabin owners. The injunction clearly stated that the HOA had no authority over properties used for seasonal occupancy unless there was a written contract agreeing to HOA inspections, which we had never signed. Karen's hands trembled as she read it. This isn't valid," she stammered. Emily tilted her head, smiling politely. "It's from the county court, Karen. Signed by a judge. So if you step 1 foot inside this cabin, you won't just be breaking HOA rules, you'll be breaking the law." And for the first time since I'd met her, Karen looked afraid. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. The kids were watching from the doorway, holding back giggles.
I almost felt bad for her.
Almost. After a long, awkward pause, Karen snapped the envelope shut, shoved it back into Emily's hands, and turned on her heel. "This isn't over," she muttered, stomping down the porch steps. We watched her speed off in her SUV, gravel spraying behind her. Emily looked at me, smirking. "Think she'll be back?" I laughed, pulling her into a hug. "If she's smart, she won't." But of course, Karen wasn't smart. And that was just the beginning. Because what happened the next morning made this little firewood argument look like child's play.
The morning after Karen's little meltdown, the woods were quiet again.
Birds chirped, sunlight filtered through the trees, and for a few peaceful hours, it felt like the nightmare was over. I was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the kids chase each other around the yard, when Emily joined me. She looked relaxed, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing one of my old flannel shirts. "Think she's really gone?" I asked, handing her a mug. Emily smirked. "Karen? She's too stubborn to quit that easily. But at least we have the law on our side." I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the kind of person who admitted defeat. And sure enough, around 10 a.m., the peace was shattered by the unmistakable growl of an engine. I glanced down the driveway, and there it was, Karen's white SUV, creeping slowly this time, almost like a predator stalking its prey.
Emily sighed.
And so it begins. Karen parked at the end of the driveway this time, like she was trying to be subtle. But she wasn't alone. Another car pulled up behind her, a sleek black sedan with the HOA logo slapped on the side. 2 men in cheap suits stepped out, carrying clipboards. Karen climbed out of her SUV, her posture stiff and triumphant, as if she'd brought backup cavalry. She marched toward us, motioning for the 2 men to follow. "Jake! Emily!" she called, her tone falsely sweet. "I've brought official representatives from the HOA board. They're here to conduct a formal inspection." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee like it was the most relaxing Saturday of my life. "Karen, we've already been over this." She ignored me and gestured to the suited men. "This property is in violation of multiple community codes. We've received complaints about excessive noise, unauthorized renovations, and unsafe storage of firewood." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Complaints? From who?" "There's no one else within a quarter-mile of us." Karen gave a little shrug. "I can't disclose that information." "Of course not."
The taller of the 2 men stepped forward.
"Ma'am, we're just here to do our job. If you'll allow us to inspect the premises." Emily held up a hand. "No one's inspecting anything." Karen smirked, already pulling out her phone. "Refusal to cooperate will result in escalating fines and possible legal action. I suggest you reconsider before this gets ugly." Emily glanced at me, and I could see that spark in her eyes again, the same spark from yesterday when she handed Karen the court document.
Without a word, Emily walked back inside the cabin.
Karen gave me a smug little smile, as if she thought Emily had finally given in.
Smart woman, Karen muttered.
She knows when she's beaten. But oh, was she wrong. Emily reappeared a moment later, not with the injunction this time, but with her phone. She held it up, camera already recording. Karen, these are the same HOA representatives you claim have the right to inspect, correct? Karen blinked, clearly not expecting to be filmed.
You can't record US without permission.
Emily tilted her head. Actually, I can. This is private property, and you're trespassing. The county sheriff confirmed just last week that any unauthorized attempt to enforce HOA rules here would be a violation of property rights. One of the suited men shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, maybe we should. Emily ignored him and kept her phone pointed directly at Karen. So, unless you have a warrant issued by a court, I suggest you and your associates leave immediately.
Karen's face flashed brick red.
She glanced nervously at the camera, clearly realizing how bad this could look if posted online. HOA harassment videos went viral all the time, and Karen loved her reputation far too much to risk being humiliated publicly. Still, she tried to recover, straightening her shoulders.
This video won't save you.
You're in violation, and we will pursue this further. Emily stepped closer, her voice steady but sharp.
Pursue all you want.
But remember, Karen, we already have that injunction. If you keep harassing us, we'll be the ones suing you. The two HOA men looked at each other, clearly wanting no part of this. One finally cleared his throat.
Maybe we should head back to the office, Karen.
There might be, jurisdictional issues. Karen spun on him. Jurisdictional issues?
No. Says bluffing.
But they were already backing away. The taller one muttered something about needing to check with legal counsel, before turning and heading back to the car. Karen stood there, fuming, as her backup literally abandoned her. Emily, still filming, gave her a polite smile. You should probably go too, Karen. Wouldn't want this video ending up on the HOA community Facebook page, right? Karen's mouth opened, then closed again. She looked like she wanted to scream, but instead she just shot us a death glare, stomped to her SUV, and drove off, tires spitting gravel behind her. The second she was gone, Emily stopped recording. The kids came running out, cheering like we'd just won some kind of battle. I pulled Emily into a hug, laughing. You're amazing, you know that? She smiled against my chest. I'm just tired of letting her push people around. Someone has to stand up to her. I kissed the top of her head, feeling proud and more than a little amused at how easily Karen crumbled when someone actually challenged her. But that smug satisfaction didn't last long, because later that afternoon, we found out Karen wasn't done. Not even close. Around 3 p.m., while I was chopping wood out back, I heard Emily's voice from inside the cabin. Sharp, tense. I dropped the axe and ran to the porch. She was standing by the kitchen window, phone pressed to her ear, her face pale.
What is it?
I asked, heart racing.
Tune up slowly, turning to me.
That was the sheriff's office. My stomach dropped. What did they say? Emily swallowed hard. Karen filed a formal complaint. She's accusing us of running an unlicensed rental business out of the cabin. She told them we were illegally renting it to multiple families every weekend. I stared at her, stunned. What? That's insane.
We don't rent this place out.
Emily nodded grimly. I know. But now the sheriff has to come out here tomorrow to investigate. I clenched my fists. Karen wasn't just harassing us anymore. She was trying to destroy us. And I knew, in that moment, this wasn't just about HOA rules for Karen. This was personal. Emily looked at me, determination hardening in her eyes. We're not letting her get away with this. I nodded. Then tomorrow, we end this. For good. The next morning, the air felt heavier, like the woods themselves knew something was about to happen. A thin mist clung to the trees, and the lake was so still it looked like glass. But the quiet didn't fool me. Karen wasn't the type to give up, and now she had dragged the sheriff into this mess. I woke up early, pacing the porch while Emily sipped her coffee inside.
I could feel the tension in every step, every breath.
Our kids were still asleep, thankfully, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. At around 9, we heard it, another car engine, this one slower, steadier than Karen's usual dramatic entrance. Emily joined me at the window just in time to see a black and white sheriff's SUV rolling up the driveway, gravel crunching beneath its tires. Karen's white SUV wasn't far behind. She parked crookedly, like she was in too much of a rush to care, and jumped out the second the sheriff stepped out. Her expression was smug, almost gleeful. "Morning, Sheriff Daniels," she called, marching toward him before he'd even shut his door. "Thank you for coming so quickly. You're going to see this is an open and shut case." The sheriff, a tall man with a sun-weathered face and the kind of patience you only get from decades of dealing with people like Karen, adjusted his hat and gave her a slow nod.
Morning, Karen.
"I'll take a look, but like I said on the phone, we have to follow proper procedure." Karen waved him off as if procedure was just a minor inconvenience. Of course. But I have evidence. Photos. Witness statements. They've been illegally renting this cabin for months. It's a violation of county zoning laws, and I demand you issue a cease and desist immediately. Emily and I stepped out onto the porch, staying calm, even as my blood boiled at her lies. "Morning, Sheriff," Emily said politely. He gave us a nod.
Morning, folks.
"I just need to ask you a few questions." Karen didn't wait for permission. She stomped up the steps, pointing an accusing finger at us. "You can drop the innocent act, Emily. The HOA has received multiple complaints. Cars coming and going at all hours, strangers staying here every weekend. This is a business, and it's illegal." Emily folded her arms, her expression calm but sharp.
Karen, that's a lie, and you know it. Karen let out a dramatic laugh.
"Oh please. You think you can just deny it and get away with this? The sheriff has to act on a formal complaint." Sheriff Daniels raised a hand to silence her.
Karen, let me handle this, all right?
Karen huffed but stepped back, crossing her arms like a queen waiting for her loyal subjects to do her bidding. The sheriff turned to us. "Do you rent this property out to others?" "No," Emily said firmly. "This cabin is for family use only. We've never rented it out, not once." Karen snorted. "Of course you'd say that. But I have proof." She pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly before shoving it at the sheriff. "See? Photos of different cars in the driveway on different weekends. That's not family, it's tenants." The sheriff took the phone, glanced at the photos, and then looked at us. I held back a laugh. "Sheriff, those are our family members and friends. That's my brother's truck. That's Emily's parents' car. We've had visitors, yes, but they're not paying us to stay here." Emily stepped forward, pulling out her own phone. "And we can prove it. I have messages, receipts, everything. Plus." She turned to me, and I knew exactly what she was about to do. Emily disappeared inside for a moment, returning with that same manila envelope, the injunction Karen hated so much. She handed it to the sheriff. "This is a court order, Sheriff. The county already ruled that this cabin is exempt from HOA enforcement because it's classified as seasonal recreational property. And as for these accusations," Emily's voice hardened, "we're prepared to file a defamation claim if Karen continues making false reports." Karen's jaw dropped.
Defamation?
"Are you threatening me?" Emily didn't flinch. "No, Karen. I'm promising you. The sheriff took his time reading through the papers, his brow furrowed. After a long silence, he handed them back to Emily and looked at Karen. Karen, this injunction is valid. The county court signed off on it. The HOA has no authority here, and unless you have solid evidence of illegal rental activity, which you don't, there's nothing more to discuss. Karen's face went scarlet. What?
No. Says lying.
She forged those papers. I know she did. The sheriff's patience finally snapped. Karen. Enough. His tone was firm, commanding. You filed a false complaint. That's a serious issue. If you keep harassing this family, they have every right to press charges. And frankly, if I get another call like this, I might be the one pressing them. Karen looked like she'd just been slapped. You're taking their side? The sheriff adjusted his hat again. I'm taking the side of the law. Emily and I stood silently, letting it sink in. Karen opened her mouth again, but the sheriff gave her a look that made her snap it shut. Finally, with one last glare at us, Karen stomped down the porch steps. This isn't over, she muttered, storming back to her SUV. The sheriff watched her go, shaking his head. Sorry about the trouble, folks. Some people just don't know when to quit. Emily smiled politely.
Thank you for coming, Sheriff.
After he left, we stood on the porch, watching Karen's SUV disappear down the road. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then I let out a laugh I'd been holding in since this whole ordeal started. Did you see her face when he threatened charges? I thought she was going to pass out. Emily grinned, leaning into me. Maybe now she'll finally leave us alone. But even as we laughed, I knew Karen wasn't the type to give up completely. Still, for now, the cabin was ours again. Peaceful. Quiet. Emily rested her head against my shoulder. Next weekend, no phones. No drama.
Used to ese and the kids.
I kissed her hair, smiling at the sound of the lake in the distance. Deal. And for the first time all weekend, it actually felt like we could breathe again.